Hello everyone. In this video we're going to talk about the new changes to Grimdark feature in version 3.3. First thing I want to note is that if you aren't aware, Grimdark feature and Age of Fantasy have the exact same rule set. So these rules will apply to both of those games, but I'm mainly going to refer to Grimdark feature because I feel like that's the most popular one. Same thing with Firefight and Skirmish. Those two games use the same rule set as well. It's just one's sci-fi and one's fantasy. I was thinking about making a separate video for Firefight and Skirmish, but I don't know if I feel like there's enough to go over that's that different from the main game. So I will be talking about Firefight and Skirmish later on. I'll put a few chapters on this video if you want to skip around. So in version 3.3, there aren't a huge amount of changes, but I think the changes that have been made are going to affect the game quite a bit. You can be the judge. Let me know down below in the comments what you think. So I'll just dive right into it. I'm going to be going through the beginner's guides and the core rules, which are both free to download. I'll put the link in the description below. They updated the graphics for the books. They mainly just added a little bit of texture to the background, and it looks like they added a new logo, and just went through the books and cleaned everything up a little bit, made it look a little bit more professional. They kept the core rules pretty simple. One thing I've always liked about this game is that you can print the rules out and it's not going to use up a ton of ink. So it's nice that they at least kept the core rules pretty simple. You could print this out and it wouldn't really take up that much ink. That's just kind of like a pet peeve of mine. And it's also something that I've always really appreciated that they've done. They make things easy to print out, or you can just reference it on your phone if you would prefer to do that. And you could easily just crop this bar out if you really wanted to, if you don't want to have to print that out. So I never made a video for version 3.2 because I didn't quite feel like there was enough meat there to really justify making a video. But with this one, I feel like the changes are significant enough that I wanted to make a video for it. I'm personally excited to try these new rules out. The first major change is that they added a new action. You can now assault. This is for hybrid units that have shooting and melee attacks. It gives you the option to use both on one turn, and you can only take half of your movement, which I think was a really smart decision. I haven't actually played a game with this yet, but I think I'm going to like it a lot. When declaring a charge action, units may choose to assault, allowing them to shoot before moving. When assaulting, units get -1 to hit when shooting and striking, and half their movement. Note that units may only take a charge action if their move would bring at least one model into base contact with another model from the target unit. Also, if the target unit is killed before the charging unit has reached base contact, then the unit may complete its remaining movement and end its activation. So I'm really interested to see how this affects the game. It's just going to add a little bit more of a cat and mouse element to the game, I think. Having like a more deadly version of a charge that you have to be a little closer to get, it's definitely going to affect some of the decisions made. If, say, for example, you're trying to get out of assault range, or if you have an ability that allows you to ambush within like 2 or 3 inches of an enemy unit, it's going to breathe new life into a lot of units that I probably would have never used before. I mean, personally, I never really had an issue with hybrid units. I always felt like the trade-off was fair to have the option to charge or shoot, but I do like that it's a charge at half movement, and you get -1 to hit, so it's not necessarily a huge buff, so I don't necessarily think that it's going to be really overpowered. It seems like it's just going to give you a little bit more flexibility, and I think it's going to add a little bit more of a strategic aspect to the game, at least for certain units. When there's multiple units in play, you're going to have to think a little bit more about where you're positioning your squads. Yeah, I'm excited to see how this affects the game. They also clarified that fatigued units cannot assault. The next major change has to do with shaken units. Shaken units now have the option to fight instead of removing their shaken status, but they still can't seize objectives. When activated, shaken units may spend their activation being idle and do nothing, which stops them from being shaken at the end of their activation. So before you were just stunned, and now you have the option to attack if you would so choose. It's not quite as big of a rules change, but I think it could definitely come into play. I think you're going to see a lot of clutch plays that wouldn't have been possible before with this. In addition to those rules, they just made a lot of clarifications around things that weren't as clear before. There were a lot of things in the core rules that didn't quite line up with the beginner's guide and that created a bit of confusion, and now they're just a lot more in sync with each other. They also made a few clarifications, like for example, units in melee don't take morale tests from wounds at the end of the activation. Just little things like that. They clarified that morale tests are taken at the end of the activation. That's pretty much how we've been playing it. It creates a lot of issues if you don't play it that way, so it's nice to see that they clarified that. The special rules haven't really changed much. They did add a few examples underneath some of these to kind of help clarify some common questions. One of the big clarifications that they made was with Sniper, still shoots at a quality 2, and each model with Sniper may pick any model in a target unit as its individual target. So if you have a group of 3 snipers, they have to target a unit, but they can target separate models within that unit. They also changed impact a little bit. When you're assaulting, the target takes 1 hit for each 3 up instead of a 2 up. That's pretty much it for the major stuff. I'll put a link to the patch notes below as well if you want to read through every single change. But yeah, some of them are pretty minor, so I don't really feel like it's worth talking about. With Firefight and Age of Fantasy Skirmish, the same rules apply. They've added the assault rule to that game as well. So if you're charging a model and you're within half of your movement, you can choose to shoot and strike, but you get -1 to hit. And when taking wound tests, shaken units are no longer stunned. They have the option to attack instead of removing their shaken marker, but they get -1 to quality and defense rolls and half their movement. And again, they still can't seize objective markers. Specifically in Firefight and Skirmish, they changed a few of the special rules around a little bit. For Blast, it ignores cover, and after resolving other special rules, each hit is multiplied by X, where X is the max as many hits as enemy models in the target unit, and within 3 inches of it. Hits must be split evenly between all enemy units within 3 inches of any model from the target. Defender picks how. And they've added a few examples here just to kind of help clarify how that works. I do think these examples really help clear this up. With this one right here, a weapon with 1 attack, 6 blast scores a hit against a unit with 3 models. That is within 3 inches of 2 other enemy units with 1 model each. So in that case, the hit is multiplied by 5 because there are 5 units. Those 5 hits get split as evenly as possible between all 3 units. So 2 units take 2 hits and 1 unit takes 1 hit. And with Fear, counts as having dealt +X wounds when checking wound effects in melee. And you must have dealt at least 1 wound. This part about having to deal at least 1 wound only applies to Firefight and Skirmish. Overall, I think these are some pretty solid changes. I was listening to their monthly live stream, and Gaetano, who's the creator of the game, if you don't know, he floated the idea of only doing these changes maybe like once a year, but he said that wasn't set in stone yet, so we'll see. I think the goal has been to clean up the rules a little bit for 3.0, and I think we're getting to the point where I think the base rule set is pretty solid, just my opinion. So it makes sense that you might see fewer and fewer of these rules updates in the future. I think you're probably still going to see a lot of army updates. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about this update. Hope you guys found this useful. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you would like to support this channel, becoming a Hans Wargaming patron is a great way to do that. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you later.